Hello everyone, happy today and welcome to the Space for the Butterflies podcast, a knitting and other crafty things podcast from my house in the very middle of a very hot England. Hello again. It's been a little while, hasn't it? I didn't mean to leave it quite so long between podcasts. Basically, number one, the real life job got a bit busy. It happens. But it means A, I'm not knitting so much, and then B, I'm working on the weekends. Not fun, but a necessary evil. And also, I kept thinking, oh, if I just wait 1 week more, I'll have finished it. And then 1 week became another week, and you have no idea how long it can take to knit 2 pairs of button bands. I never thought it would take that long to knit 2 button bands. But anyway, in what is possibly as obvious as wearing a Shetland stranded jumper in 28-degree heat can possibly be. The reason I wanted to wait is to show you I have finished my, it's not called Coinneach, Coinneach yoked cardigan, and here it is. You can't see a lot of it other than me waving hello. So I'll stand up slightly. Ta-da! So there's the button band and the buttons and the yoke. And what I'll probably do is put in some pictures here of what it actually looks like, because it's 28 degrees and I'm turning pink, so I'm going to take this off again. It is, however, a lovely, lovely cardigan. I've only had one occasion to wear it since I finished it where it was actually cold enough to need it, other than just to go, look, I made it and it's so pretty. But it was very warm and snuggy when it was, and I really liked it. So, when I saw you last, I think I was somewhere in the yoke. I'm pretty sure we had some yoke. Since then, obviously, we have got a finished button band at the top, and then there was the magic in which a circle became a part, and that was the steek. So let's roll back the clock a little bit and start with first stage of the steek. So, first stage of the steek was to make sure that the two edges of the steek weren't going to come apart as soon as I started chopping up the middle of my jumper. The first time I ever did a steek, I did some zigzag stitching on the sewing machine to kind of try and reinforce it. I never found that those steeks came apart. If you look back into my previous podcast, one of the first jumpers I'm wearing, I think possibly in the first podcast, is the Rainbow County sweater, and that was my first ever steek. Now that jumper is a good decade at least old, I say, possibly more. I've never had a problem with that. None of it has budged an inch in all that time. And that yarn, while sticky, is not quite as sticky as Shetland wool, so I had no worries about this at all. However, just to keep things nice and neat and tidy, I did crochet up the inside of the stitches as directed. Kate Davies has a really useful tutorial which I'll link to in the show notes for where you do the crocheting. What you're seeing now on the video is not the same as what I actually did. So this is what I actually did, which is using white yarn. This is essentially just, well, it's just sock yarn, white sock yarn, that I happen to have lying around. What I was trying to do was use some turquoisey hand spun that was a very similar colour that would have looked really nice. It was too thick. I could already see it starting to buckle, so that plan got shelved. And then as soon as the crochet was done on either side, gently sort of squeezing them apart, it was time to take my sharpest of sharp scissors and start cutting. Well, hi everybody and welcome to the past. As you can see, here we have got my jumper all crocheted and ready for steeking. What you'll see is I've reinforced the steek down the middle with 2 rows of crochet using, I actually used a 3.25mm hook because that's the smallest hook I've got, but that's what we used, and some white sock yarn, which is clearly not the yarn in the little bit of video demonstrating how I did the crochet steek. But the yarn I was using was some hand spun, and it just turned out a bit too thick, and it was already starting to make this edge bobble a little bit. So we undid that and whited it. It's probably not the permanent solution, it's obviously not the best colour to go with this, but as my long-term plan is that I probably won't keep the reinforcement, and I'm going to try and get some grosgrain ribbon or something to cover it up when it's all tucked in on the inside. It won't be there forever, and it'll do for now. So let's see if we can show you what it looks like. So we'll start with the cast on edge down the bottom. Now if I pull this, maybe if I put a bit of, excuse the noises off, if I put some white paper underneath you might be able to see it a little bit better. Or maybe not. I'll try holding up close to the camera. But you should be able to see that between there I have got a single line of stitches, and that is what I'm going to be cutting. So, time to begin. I know all the books say you should probably have a gin or a lie down after you've done a steek, but actually I don't find them too scary. I've done 4, I think, so far. And this wool is so lovely and sticky it should stay together no problem at all. So here we have my nice sharp scissors, and it's time to go for it. So just very carefully cutting down between the 2 white edges with my hand underneath so that I don't accidentally cut into the back of the jumper. My grandmother always used to tell me a story about when she was a little girl. She was spent a Sunday afternoon very carefully pinning out and cutting out a pattern for a dress for her dolly, only to discover that she'd pinned the pattern and the fabric to the front of her summer frock and cut out some very nice dolly shaped pieces from the front of her Sunday frock. I rather imagine my great grandmother wasn't terribly impressed with that. Here we go. And you can start to see, you know, it's a lovely, nice, neat edging. And it's starting to sit quite flat as well, which is also what we want. So very carefully, on we go. And now I'm coming up to the exciting bit of the steek, the colour work. This is the moment of truth to check I've got the crochet in the right spot. But it's all going to get folded in onto the inside, so if it went a bit wrong it wouldn't actually be the world's biggest disaster. And what you can see is that I haven't actually darned in the ends of the loose ends from the steek, mainly because, as I said, I want to cover up. I want to cut the steek down a bit and cover it with ribbon. And I'll just be cutting all the ends off, so they're not going to go anywhere, so for now we should be good. Last little bit. And there we have it. As you can see, no disasters have occurred, no thunderbolts have struck. The edging is a little bit bobbly, which is probably because I used the 3.25 needle rather than, but I don't have a smaller crochet hook, so I just went with what I've got. But you can see how, I mean, this is the rest of the steek, so the edging will pick up from here, and then this will all just turn inside. And I can either just literally just tack it down, which will be the short-term fix, or the long-term fix. Let's see if I've got a bit of ribbon to hand. I'm usually falling over the stuff and now I can't find any. There's a zip to hand. Let's imagine this zip is a piece of ribbon. So what I'll do long term is find a piece of ribbon and just tack it down over the top, and then all the edges will be enclosed. And in doing that, I'll cut off this white bit. I'll cut the steek down probably by another couple of stitches, tack the ribbon over the top, and all will be good. And now, back to the future. So with that done, then I picked up and knit the button bands, and there's it, you can start to see them. And I picked up by going all the way through. I know sometimes you can sort of fold it over and knit through the top half of a stitch, but I picked up going through to the back. So if I unfurl this, you can see that there's what looks like a line of running stitch down there, and that's me picking up for the steek stitches. So you can see I've got some loose ends up in the colour work here. No loose ends in this bit because I split spliced all of it. But in this one we've got some loose bits lying around. As long as they are just brushed down and tucked in on there, nothing's going anywhere. I'm not expecting there to be any problems with that whatsoever. And then once we had button bands, it was time for buttons. Oh, actually one thing I should say about the button bands. The instructions for this suggest that you knit 2 plain button bands, sew your buttons on the front, and then sew your popper studs on the back, so that your buttons never sag or look funny in the buttonholes or something like that. I can see the idea behind it, and I think probably if you wear your cardigans, oh that's good, the hot water bottle has been going off, now it's stopped. I think if you don't wear your cardigans as cardigans, i.e. if you always wear them buttoned all the way up, then that probably works, but I tend to throw cardigans on fairly loosely, and I might do a couple of buttons up. It's fairly rare for me to sit there with a cardigan buttoned all the way down to the bottom, although on this one I possibly could, it fits me quite nicely. So what I did on this one is, oh, I'll show you from the pretty side. Come on, let's have it from the outside people facing side. So yeah, we have some buttonholes in here. You can see one there, 7 in total. These are 2 colour buttonholes which I did following the instructions in Meg Swanson's Sweaters from Camp. None of the patterns exactly have instructions on this, but at the very beginning of the book in the introduction she has a whole load of different buttonhole options. And this was, I can't remember what it's called. It's the one, if you've got the book, it's the one at the top left on the page about buttonholes, but I can't remember what they're called. I think it's a 1 row 2 colour buttonhole. The water boiler started going again, sorry about that. So yeah, so they were knit up onto the orange row. Maybe I should have done them on the row before, but you can't tell when I'm wearing it, it's all absolutely fine. So yeah, so I just did 7 buttonholes in there, just counted them in. I would rather have it like that than all the faff with tape and press studs and all the rest of it. And I think probably you just end up seeing a lot of press studs a lot of the time when I was wearing it. So for me that works better. The original pattern's a nice idea. The buttons themselves are these ones. So yes, they are all these gorgeous metal buttons. I'm hoping this is focused. Gorgeous metal buttons with a sort of greenish tinge in the middle. And if you look on the backs of them as well, they're all sort of lovely and greenish as well. And these are actually the buttons that came, so these are actually the buttons that came off my County Rainbow sweater. Having decided that it was no longer functional as a sweater, it hasn't actually been thrown out because John, my husband, wants to use it as a backdrop for art or something. I'm not asking too much about it, but anyway, it's no longer a cardigan. So I decided the buttons were far too good to waste, they were never going to get trashed, and it just seemed to be the perfect number to put on this cardigan. So I essentially have one cardigan replaced with another, and I couldn't be happier about it. Because I know people, well, I always like to see what the inside looks like. Here's the back of the, oh, that's the back of all the colour work. It all just evens out beautifully. I didn't catch any floats going across on this. None of the gaps were big enough to really justify catching floats. And I find that when you're knitting with a very nice sticky wool like Shetland wool, it just holds together. When I made the kids' baby blankets, which is out of Alice Starmore's own brand wool, I did catch some of the floats, but that was because our little babies with tiny fingers were going to be messing with it. Although, to be honest, when they were very tiny, they had the blankets on their prams, And when they got a bit bigger and started pulling at things, those ones went away and we had another one instead. But yeah, no risk of that here, so it all just looks like a pretty inverse of what we did. And just to see that, I'll show you this bit in close up as well, because it's got that sort of boho-esque thing going on with the pearl stitches, and I just think it's really pretty. So just in final summary, we have got Jamiesons of Shetland Spindrift in the colour Sky, and then all the colour work is various colours of Kate Davies' own Milrocchy Tweed, in all the pretty colours that we love. Just for anyone who's curious about Shetland wool, in particular the Jamieson Spindrift, when I was knitting with it, you can feel it's got a bit of a tooth. This is not merino, there's no suggestion that it is. But when you block it, and this had a good soak, oh, nearly an hour probably, in a nice big bowl with lots of lovely eucalyptus. I mean, I was trying it on as I was making it and thinking, okay, you know, this is bearable. You could feel that there was a slight roughness to it, but it wasn't itchy. It was just not soft. It's so hard to describe something, yeah, not soft but not itchy is how I put it. Now it's sat in the eucalyptus, it's just bloomed that little bit and there's just this lovely halo on it, and it's actually really soft. It's not merino still, but it's really snuggly and it's incredibly warm, and you can just feel that warmth when you put it on, which is, again, wow, so pink. When I put it on the one day it was cold and I actually wanted it, it was just so lovely and snuggly and it felt instantly warm wearing it. So this is a definite hit. I think it's a beautiful pattern. Another stunning knocked it out of the park design from Kate Davies, and lovely colours that they remind me of home. All the colours were inspired by Start Bay, which is in South Devon. So we've got sort of the colour of early morning skies and wave tops on rough days, dark blue sea, more tealy coloured sea, green for bracken and trees, and then red because we have pink mud in Devon. Very tin heavy soil, so we have pink mud in South Devon. It makes me happy, and that's really what knitting should do. I enjoy knitting it and I enjoy wearing it. It's a hit. That is possibly the most important thing I've finished, and certainly the one that's taken the most work. That has been on the go for a good few months, so it's lovely to have it finished just in time for the heatwave. But obviously this started to get quite large, so I thought, I know, I'll make John some socks for his birthday. We actually have the same birthday, which is a couple of weeks ago. Actual same date of birth, yes. We like confusing people on official forms. Technically I am older, but only by about 4 hours, so we're not going to count it. So I thought, I know, I've got loads of time, I'll make him some socks. And I had this lovely plan that maybe I'd make him 2 pairs, maybe more, see how we go, maybe make him a hat. Yeah, I made him one, and I cast 1 pair of socks, and not 1 sock, he did get 1 pair of socks, 1 for each foot. But I cast off the 2nd sock on the train home on the day before our birthday. Nothing like being efficient. But anyway, they were done, and here they are. Woohoo! These are Sirdar Heart and Sole, which I have never knit with before, but it's a very standard sock yarn. 75% wool, 25% nylon. It's in the feel of things like opal and regia. It's that kind of sock yarn. But yeah, so this is Heart and Sole in a colour called Kiss Chase, which makes it a really good thing I knit them for my husband and not for my brother-in-law or my dad or something like that. Having said that, I started one of these ones, I started it in the queue to Kraemer Island to get to the ferry ticket office to get the tickets to go to Kraemer Island, and I was stood there with my dad in the queue, and he looked and said, I don't like those colours. I was like, good, because they're not for you. I didn't know it was called Kiss Chase at the time, I only found that out later. They are a 72 stitch sock, because that's what we do for John. 2.5mm needles. I didn't count the rows of ribbing, I actually just went with colour changes on this one rather than counting numbers. Usually I do 20, 60, heel flap heel, 54 toe, wedge toe. What I did on this one was went by the colours, so green, orange, and then as soon as the colours, the yarn changed to this sort of steely grey blue, I changed into stockinette and went all the way down, and then when we got to the pink bit, and I'd knit, they're about 10 rounds each, these. So when I got to the pink bit, I stopped, and we have an afterthought heel on this one. So what I actually did, and you can see the pictures on my Ravelry page, and if I remember I will put one in here, and if I don't, I won't. But what you haven't just seen is one of these socks minus its heel. So I got to the bit that was pink. Actually, we'll start with the sock the right way up, that's probably helps, doesn't it? So I got to here, and then I used some waist sock yarn and knit 36 stitches all the way around, and then came back again, and with the colour going into green, carried on knitting and kept going all the way down. And then I just did an ordinary toe on the colour change green to orange, which works out about 54 rows, which is about what John has for a pair of socks. Then I did exactly the same on the other one, and then I looked at what I had left in the ball of yarn and started pulling out bits of yarn enough that I could have two matching heels, and it actually turns out that the heels match the toes, which is always quite nice. And essentially I just picked up, so I unpicked that bit of waist yarn, picked up the live stitches around it, made sure I had 36 back on the needle, and then knit another toe. And so I've got, yeah, 4 toes. But essentially it works out as a lovely afterthought heel. And it works really well with these really big bold stripes, I think. I just think if I did a heel flap, it would disrupt. You get some weird colours going on at the end, and even if the colour changes worked out quite nicely on the heel flap, which it might have done on this one, there'd still be that section of the sock here where it's just that bit broader, and so the stripes get narrower, and my inner perfectionism can't quite live with that. Plus it's fun to do something different every now and again. So yes, so we have these, which actually look slightly crisper when they've not been taken straight out of the laundry basket. He put them on the day of our birthday, and they've been worn a few times since, and they need to go through the laundry again now, which I suppose, if nothing else, is a compliment. Clearly he likes the socks, which is probably a good way to lead into what I'm knitting at the moment, because as I said, I plan to knit him more than one pair of socks, because a lot of his socks were knit all about the same time, which means they've all got holes now, so he's actually looking a little bit thin on fluffy socks, as he calls them. So I wound up a yarn of glory. Look at this. No, don't focus on me, focus on the yarn. I don't know how to make my iPhone focus on things that are closer to me, but you can see the colours. They are just absolutely beautiful. I'd say 3 guesses where you think this came from, but I think it probably speaks for itself. It's Wollmeise, or Rosenkranz and Wollmeise, to be properly official. This is the twin, so it's the 80-20, is it merino or is it just wool? Anyway, something that came from a sheep and some nylon, rather than the 100% wool, which does not last if you try and knit even tiny bits of it into socks. See previous podcast, or possibly the one before that. So I wound this up and thought, this will make lovely travel knitting. And then we went to Devon just after our birthday, and I spent a lovely Saturday morning. I woke up quite early and just sort of felt fairly awake. So I just sat there and read magazines and knitted and knitted and knitted and knitted, and before I knew it, I had the best part of a sock. So this is how it looks at the moment. Wonderful, wonderful stripes and pulls going on. So it's one that does yellow and blue, and then another one that's sort of more in the pinky purples and turquoises, and we're now down to the heel, which is why it's all, this is the standard heel flap heel. I always do a slip stitch pattern on the heel. 2 reasons. One, I think it's a little bit thicker, so it just lasts that little bit longer, but also it makes it a lot easier to count the rows that I've done on the heel before I start turning the heel flap. And I love them. Just look at the colours on that bit. There's a little part of me wishes that I could make it knit broad stripes like that, but not if I want to do 72 stitch socks. So this again is, 72 stitch sock, 2.5mm needle, and this has been my travel knitting all around. And a little bit of knitting when I don't want to watch the television, because everything else I'm working on requires me to... That came out the wrong way, didn't it? I mean, it's knitting I do when I do want to watch the television and don't want to watch the knitting. The sunshine. We're not used to it in England. I'm terribly sorry, but it's addling my brain. So yes, this is mindless knitting to me. I don't need to watch it, so it's all good. Makes for good travel knitting. I don't think I've told you the colour either, have I? Oh, dear me. This is Maharani. I'm actually just going to check that. I did write it down. This is, yes, Maharani. I tried to try and put it into Google Translate to see if it's something exciting in German. It's Maharani. It tried to translate it for me from Indonesian into Maharani. And the reason I need some travel knitting is because pretty much as soon as my Coinneach cardigan was cast off, I cast on for something else I can't pronounce. But I can tell you about the yarn, so let's do that first. Because there's not very much. Well, let's see if we can guess. This is what I have so far. And several swatches. It doesn't really tell you an awful lot, other than that I'm doing some green knitting. It's Sanguine Gryphon Bugga in the Peacock Autumn Tiger Beetle colourway. And this obviously goes back a while. It's blowing out the camera beautifully because it's this lovely dark green. When you see it in good light, it's a really lovely bottly green with lots of variations in the shade. If you see it in low light, or dodgy cameras, as tends to be my case, it's mostly sort of dark green bordering on black. But it is actually a lovely dark green with some olives and some pine, some light greens. It's all the kind of colours of green that suit me. So it's beautiful. It is proper Sanguine Gryphon Bugga, if that makes sense. Sanguine Gryphon, I think I changed to Celopod yarns after a little while, and so you can get some Bugga that's Celopod yarns Bugga and Skinny Bugga. And for anyone in England, it's B-U-G-G-A, not any other spelling. That's a lost in translation to anyone who's not a natural English speaker, like British English. So yeah, beautiful, beautiful colour. And this is going to be, now I'm pretty sure that this should be pronounced Bairbre. It's spelled B-A-I-R-B-R-E. It's an Isabell Kraemer pattern. I've never knit one of her patterns before, but I have about a gazillion in my favourites and in my queue on Ravelry. This one is, the design of it is a fairly loose fitting, essentially a loose fitting V-neck jumper. Very, very simple. But it's got a really beautiful rib and just, there's some really nice touches that just makes it really sort of classic. And a lovely way to show off a really pretty yarn. So the plan is to have it not quite as much positive ease as the ones on the pattern photographs in Ravelry. I've seen some that have been done with very distinctly with negative ease, as well as a lot of positive ease. I want to be somewhere between the two. Ideally, and all things ideal, I want it put 0 to a smidgen of positive ease kind of over the shoulders and over the bust, and then a bit more positive ease around the tummy and waist and hips and all the other bits of it that we don't need to have particularly form-fitting clothes on. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out on the pattern. I'm knitting with the right weight of yarn, but my swatching, I couldn't get anywhere near. It's supposed to be 22 stitches to 4 inches. I couldn't get anywhere near as low as 22. And the fabric that I really liked coming off of my swatches was much higher. So I'm on more about 25, 26-ish. So I've cast on the number of stitches for the extra large, knowing that, or possibly the extra large, the highest size anyway, knowing that I'm knitting smaller, which is what I need for the kind of measurements I want. And it's top down, so I'll just try it on as it goes. I've got 4 skeins of this, which should theoretically be enough. But my plan is to knit top down and then knit the body of it as long as I want to have the body of it, and then come back and basically split the yarn and knit the sleeves as long as I can get them. And I think if it's 3/4 length sleeves, I won't mind, because my idea of this top is it'll be something that I wear over maybe a skinny vest top and jeans in the winter as a nice warm casual top. So I want it to be long enough, but if it's 3/4 length sleeves, I quite like 3/4 length sleeves. They're quite practical, particularly with the kids, and they're not too hot, and they don't dip into taps and things like that. I'm just not very coordinated with taps, perhaps, but I do quite like a 3/4 length sleeve, and I find that being a very tall woman, I look like I haven't been able to find or make clothes long enough for me if it's even the tiniest bit too short in the body, but I can get away with not having enough length in the sleeve and it not look like a baby giraffe impersonation, nothing like that. That's the plan. We will see how it works out. At the moment, as I said, it's just been a bit too hot for wearing knitwear, and on several occasions a bit too hot to even think about knitting anything bigger than a sock, because it might sit on you, even when all I've got is about 3 inches of knitting. So I need to pick that up again and see where it goes. I also want to pick up again my mood blanket that I started last year, mainly because I want to finish it in time for my little boy's birthday, hopefully. I think it may end up abandoning the whole mood concept for the last few squares and just knitting whatever squares I feel like, because I think if I wait to do it as mood squares, I'll either forget what mood I was in or just get so behind it doesn't get finished in time. I've got till August, but I think I probably need more than just July's worth of squares, so we'll just knit some and see how the mood takes me. I'll still do the colour changes at the right point, but just knit a whole one in an evening, I would imagine, and see where we go from there. And last, but by no means least, what I have been reading, Laine issue 4. It was a birthday present from my dad and I really love it. He and my sister also clubbed together, and her family, also clubbed to give me another knitting book, which is very, very special. But I haven't finished reading it yet, so I shall read it and then it will make an appearance on the podcast. But yes, he bought me Laine issue 4. The other Laine issue I showed you on a previous podcast was issue 1. Now, 2 and 3 are downstairs in my husband's studio. They are there because I bought them as rewards for writing a certain number of words of fiction, and I haven't written enough words to unlock them yet. I wrote enough words to get issue 1, but not 2 and 3, so I have some more writing to do. But I decided that I'm not keeping up with issues of Laine. It's not good, is it? I need to do some more writing. Yeah, I'm not keeping up with the issues, so otherwise I was going to get horrifically behind and have them stacked up to like issue 40. While I was still reading issue 2, so I have this one as a birthday present, which is lovely. I know issue 5's just come out, so I just have to look out for that in Yarndale. But issue 4 it's just as beautiful as issue 1, and as beautiful as I'm sure issues 2 and 3 are when I get to them eventually. But oh, I mean, look. I love that jumper. I think that's gorgeous. I love the sort of drippy stripes. There's probably a very technical term for that that's not drippy stripes. What was the other one I thought was really, really pretty? This one. Oh, I have visions of that. Knitted in the extra small for my eldest daughter in a sort of very Christmas cherry red. That would look really pretty on her. I have to do that. I have some Sanguine Gryphon Bugga in tomato red that would just be... We'll have to see. Anyway, so this is what I'm reading. If you get the opportunity to check it out, do, because I think it's an absolute another cracker. I love the aesthetic that they've got, and the patterns they've got are really, really beautiful, but also really wearable and very knittable. What more could you really want? So on that note, I will say thank you very much for joining me again today. It was nice to be back. I'm sure I'll think of 1,000,001 things I probably should have said this time, so hopefully there'll be another podcast in a couple of weeks. And you'll be able to see a little bit more green jumper and maybe get more of a sense of what it looks like than my slightly haphazard description. So for now, I should say have a lovely today, and I'll see you again soon. Bye!